Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with the SAPI IP Business Talks. This evening, we are in Europe, in Germany on the one hand, and in the United States, in Chicago on the other hand. Again, it's fascinating that it works, and I hope it works, that our connectivity or our connection is stable. I'm very happy to have here Franklin Bruscianelli, and I have Jonas Block. They are both from a company which is called IPV. We'll learn a little bit more today about what they are doing, about their background, what is motivating them, what is fascinating them. I have also a guest, an accredited guest to our show, and this is this time Udo Gennari. He is very close to me, so I'm in Bavaria and he is in Upper Austria, so that's quite close. And I know Udo from many different conferences, so he's very well experienced in IP management. He's helping especially SMEs in Austria. I'm very happy that he's here. He will be available to you in our chat, and that is what we would like to see. So give us your questions. Give us your comments in the chat. I will pick up that, and when it is anyhow possible, I integrate it directly in our live talk today. And of course, we have again our after show party, so we will be available after that discussion on LinkedIn and trying to answer and connect and give you additional materials via LinkedIn to give you a deeper insight on what we talked about. So now the floor is for Jonas Block. Please tell us who you are, what you're doing, and especially what is your background and what is right now your mission.
First of all, thank you very much for having us here and for the introduction. It's great to be here. Maybe a couple of words on my background is, my name is Jonas Block. As you can probably hear, I'm a German national based in Düsseldorf, here at the heart of patent litigation. And that's basically also my history, my track record. I've been working as a patent infringement litigator here at two different law firms in Düsseldorf for almost 10 years. And written a PhD thesis on automated patent licensing specifically, and automated quality detection in patents. So patent aficionado, and I have joined IPV in 2020. I started off as head of AI development there, being tasked with improving the algorithms and benchmarking the algorithms that we have in place. I have now moved into the product department because I'm coming more distant to the legal world and focusing more on the needs of some customers that lawyers can service because of cost being prohibitive to some extent. And we'll get to that at a later point in time. But thanks a lot, and I'll hand over to Franklin.
Yes. Yeah. Please, Franklin.
Thank you again for having us. Thanks, Jonas. My name is Franklin Bruscianelli. I'm currently the Director of Sales Operations and Customer Success at IPV. I'm a little more green than Jonas. My experience goes back 4 years. Everything I know about IP has been through IPV, previously in the financial service industry. I've pretty much started as a patent analyst for the company and have continued to work with clients on the transaction side of the business and have developed a deeper understanding of patents and how beneficial they are for society. Since then, I'm now more focused on the SMEs and smart pools and helping drive innovation a little bit further and bringing transparency to the IP market. So thank you again for having us.
Yes, you're welcome. So you mentioned smart pools. I don't get it really. And I'm afraid a lot of our audience is not really in that kind of definition. And so this technology deep dive. So we have traditional patent pools. I would say that is well established and people know what that means. So it's an aggregator. So you try to collect patents for a certain a business issue and license it out or so. I mean, that's normal. But what is a smart pool compared to we can say classical, traditional patent pool?
Maybe I take this one first. So that's a good question, and the smart sounds very interesting, but it doesn't give a lot of background explanation. It's just about an image.
Today we can put smart on every other, smart grid, smart mobility, smart home. I mean, why not smart pools? But I'm very curious what it means.
Even the dumbest contracts are now smart contracts. So
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly.
So the smart pools they are smart because they are automated to some extent, or largely automated even, but also smart because they approach one of the biggest problems that the IP space is currently facing, at least based on my experience, is essentially holdout strategies by potential licensees, and or hold up strategies by licensors, and then high royalty rate requests. So the smart pools have a different angle to attracting or how they relate to innovation and the innovation life cycle in general. So when it comes to smart pools, they focus on emerging technologies. So you were referring to traditional patent pools, and traditional patent pools, they're kind of bought in. So if you think in the way that the European Commission looks at patent pools, for example, is you are, in terms of market shares, always very late in the adoption cycle. So you have very deep technology saturation on the product market, and you have a very dense technology market. So these companies that are technology leaders in that space, they are invested heavily in the technology already, because they had to develop a lot to gain and maintain these market shares, and they want to see return on invest on that. And on the other hand, the implementers, they have been around for quite a while. They have adopted the technology, and even though we all understand that this is definitely not correct, but the IP compliance is just lacking sometimes. So you're used to not being held liable for payment for accessing this technology, and that often ends in litigation, because you have high royalty requests, low probability of signing the licensee up, so you have to litigate them with the sweet German injunctions into the patent pools. And we approach it from a different perspective, because we form these pools quickly at a very early stage while the technology is still emerging. There's a couple of recognized leaders in the space, but there's not that one market dominant, or potentially, I don't want to get into the weeds of antitrust law, but there's not that one lighthouse company that leads the market massively on the technology side. You have a lot of smaller players. They all understand that they need to license each other in order to go ahead to bring their technology to fruition, to actually be able to operate with a decent margin on the product market as well. So they cross-license each other, and the two benefits are you are very, very early in. So I think you have very high IP awareness that you are using someone else's intellectual property, and of course you have to pay for that. And the other dimension is that you are freer in your thinking, because you don't have to wait until there's a dominant solution that prevails over other solutions. You can just pick the solution that you deem the most appropriate for your technical problem that you're solving, because you have licensed a lot of the relevant patents. And maybe one example is on the blockchain side. We have, I think it's 1,200 something patents that are now licensed out on our blockchain smart pool, for example. So that's a large portion of the available blockchain patents out there, and that gives you a lot of leeway to develop products and to basically leapfrog forward, piggyback on someone else's developments against a fee, of course. And maybe that was a lot of maybe some questions, or hand over to Franklin for some additional.
Yes, Franklin, please.
Yeah, the piggyback is, pools provide SMEs with the ability to compete in a highly competitive market. Today's society is very fast moving. Technology is always improving, and it's survival of the fittest. And the only thing that's constant amongst these players and these companies is innovation itself. So many SMEs are not able to innovate, due to this excessive cost incurred with it. And our goal is ultimately to change this.
Okay, do I understand that right? That you say we have the situation that we have a lot of smaller companies which need, from a market and technological standpoint, access to licenses. And for example, in a blockchain technology, just as one example. And then what you say is we create a smart pool, and don't get it so far what the smartness is. So far it's a pool. You create a pool, and then you give access to these SMEs that they can use that technology. I mean, that is so far the pool logic. So where comes the smartness
in? I can start this one, and Jonas can get a little deeper, but typical patent processes and innovation is traditionally seen as this long and expensive process, right? You file for a patent, it goes to the office, and it takes a couple years to even come through. That takes time, that takes money. That's something that these SMEs and other innovators don't really have, especially when these giant companies are doing it every day for no reason, just filing away any type of patent they want. So the smartness comes from the identification of valuable assets that cover specific tech areas that we can provide to the market, and offering that to them as a way to bypass that first initial step to even get into the game of innovating and creating new technologies.
Okay, so you don't offer every technology to everybody. You identify who might be interested in which kind of the technology, in which part of the technology. Is that right?
That's correct. You can't just have a pool covering every single device or method under the sun. You do need segments of technological areas because it relates to specific companies, and it's an easy way to distinguish, which pools would I like to join as a company or as an innovator, and what am I doing that relates to the technology in the pool.
Okay, I got you. I guess I got you. That means you have certain offerings of licenses for a certain technology, and you identify potential licensees who might be interested on that, and you bring that two parts together, right?
Exactly.
Okay, got you. So this is we could call it also a kind of active pool. So you really identify and approach people and say, okay, we what we see from what you did so far, we assume that you might be the right people who license that technology because that seems to be in your interest.
We maybe, to add to this, we even see the opposite, which is kind of surprising. We have companies reaching out to us and say, could you please start a smart pool in technology area XYZ? I would be prepared to pay a license fee if I get access to portfolios in that space. So we even have an oversupply when it comes to, or over demand, and we have to find the license source and the patent owners that are willing to contribute their patents in specific spaces, which is something that I've rarely heard of for existing traditional patent pools, is that you have licensees.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes absolutely sense. That we have such complex technologies, especially on these IoT, blockchain, name it. I mean, all these smart technologies, and it makes sense that you react to a smart technology with a smart pool. Udo Gennari is asking a very relevant question, and I would say we left it a little bit to the later stage of the discussion about the question how we can evaluate or how we can make valuations for these license rates, especially when it's about when it is about an early technology. So when I get you right, this is a dedicated SME support, right? Because the big players have enough resources, they identify exactly what they need, but the smaller the companies become, the less uncomfortable they feel with these amount of patents, with the complexity of technology. So you are offering to them also a certain kind of, let's say, consulting support, or you reduce your support on, let's say, just making the deal happen, that these SMEs are, from a legal standpoint, allowed to do to use that technology.
Yeah, on that one, that's a very good question. So on the SME side, there's a couple of things that I have noted when I was still a legal practitioner out there, is that if you are small, you often have a very hard time to get access to a portfolio. So even if huge companies would, in principle, be open to licensing, they have a minimum deal size. So they will not bother you. They will not bother their IP team with your request. You are small. You might be worth, let's say, $50,000.
I can't agree more. That's a real issue. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can't go there, and then we're discussing potentially even intentional infringement at some point in Germany. So if you have grown, you suddenly become an interesting target. But before this, there was no way for you to comply, because you didn't get access to it. And of course, because why would I license to someone if my own internal transaction costs are higher than the amount of money that I'm redeeming from this license? And the way that we approach that, and then you can say we are specifically benefiting small companies or SMEs and startups, is that we are applying standardization of license agreements in that space. So very bad news for lawyers is that the red line is reduced, which is always unfortunate. You can change maize to shells. And so you just have a one-size-fits-all agreement very early on. We don't, it's based on revenues, so we don't do annual reporting obligations. You pay a one-off fee to be in the game, but because we have a broader reach than traditional pools, we don't rely on a few heavy targets per year, because we are making the pie bigger by just making the potential range of licensees bigger, and that I think is interesting. And regarding the pricing structure, is also, it's progressive, so you don't have to really be concerned as long as you're small. We're not trying to take your hard-earned revenues away from you at a very early stage. It's more that we are opening up these portfolios, and the intention is that you grow with the technology area, and as you grow, you will be giving back with increasing royalty rates over time, because you see the upsides of being in this environment. And one additional question is, that's a very interesting one that you touched upon slightly, is regarding advisory services or additional services. There is a service element that we provide. We don't intend to really be the outsourced legal department of these SMEs. We are an IP enabler. So if there are strategic questions, yes, absolutely, we address that. But what I think is very interesting is patents are understood as being rights to exclude others from your technology. And I think to get there, you need to, we discussed this as in terms of enablement legally. Have I disclosed enough for the person skilled in the art to be enabled to recreate this, whatever? But what I think is interesting is that our licensors do not just offer what I refer to naked patent licenses. No, especially from university tech transfer, you can attach know-how to it. You might have standalone trade secrets in addition to this that you would like to license together with your patents, because they make so much more sense. So why not give away the source code? And we see this in the digital link patent pool, for example. The source code is open. So if you comply with the IP, you can also fast forward into the future. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. And for universities who are NPEs because they're not producing, it's even more interesting because they are more willing to give away more of their know-how. So having a university in a pool contributing the professor's lab notebook is very interesting, because you can get so much more incentives and ideas and solutions from it than just the formal admission to the market because they are waiving their exclusivity, which is like the legal limb of it. So I think it's also smart in that regard.
Yeah, got you. I mean, one question which came up, and I think that is quite interesting. So, to make this matching, I mean, that's to a certain extent, I would say, a kind of the holy grail of technology transfer. We're talking about that for many years, and this is another issue. So we have they have the volume issue, we have the complexity issue, we have the deal structure, contract issue, and we have this matching issue. And all of the issues rise the costs of the transaction and lead exactly to what you say. And I mean, this is exactly my experience over many years, that even when you try to get a license as an SME, you don't get it because nobody has time, and it is simply not worth to talk with you, which leads you in a situation where you say, naja, okay, dann halt nicht, but to a certain extent you forget it, or you say, okay, then I'm do it other way, in another way, and which leads you to huge legal risk sooner or later. I mean, that's obvious and makes absolutely sense. But again, how do you make this matchmaking, which is a real tricky issue here, obviously? I mean, I don't know, Franklin, can you explain us?
Sure. So a little, history lesson is IPWE was founded in 2018. And even before that, in 2007, we acquired an AI engine that has been trained over the past several years to read and evaluate patents. And there's an element of that is used in our matchmaking to find, based on the similar filers and other aspects of the patents, to make those initial matches. However, the pools that we're working on are relatively new in the space, so there's not a lot of licensing activity or previous transaction history. So the AI is awesome, it's great, but it truthfully takes us about 80% of the way, and the other 20% is still always going to be our human efforts and our experience to look at those patents and find the matches within the output of the AI. So using a little bit of that tool to help us get along the way, and then identify those players that would be a good fit for the pool, either as a founder or just a general member, and then expanding that offering across the ecosystem.
Okay, so I understand you have a trained HI system which is learning from each and every transaction to improve the recommendation. So it's a kind of recommendation engine. I mean, it's not a rocket science to a certain extent. That everybody who sits in front of Netflix in the evening is a little rat in an AI experiment, and Netflix runs a very good AI machine. And when I get the figure right, so to an 80% probability, you follow the suggestions of Netflix. You don't search for something which is maybe in the database from and is available from Netflix. You don't search, you just follow the recommendation. So that means you follow the AI. And that means we all are used to AI. We simply don't know how it works, or we don't know that we follow. And so that shows how good it can work. And this is what you say. You say you have a well-trained AI which is again with machine learning trained with each and every transaction and each and every fitting recommendation. And so you become with every transaction, with every day, better in making that suggestions. Did I get it right?
Exactly. And Jonas can get a little much deeper into this, but at a high level.
Oh, I would like to hear something about that. Jonas, can you explain? I mean, be merciful, sure. Okay, but I'm very interested, and I guess the audience too.
You will like it then. So our AI, what it does is it comes from a validity history. So it originally started out to find flaws in patents that are asserted or that are supposed to be asserted. So what it does is it has a very rigorous validity assessment that can be undertaken. So it basically recreates what the examiner or any given skilled person would be doing, is that it slices the claim into its segments and then searches for similar claims. But the beauty of what we're doing for the smart pool specifically is that we're addressing it from different angles, because you are overly limited. We are not searching for patents with the identical scope of protection. We are looking for patents with a similar scope of protection and with a similar technology area. And because you might refer to this more from a freedom to operate perspective, which is one of the beauties. We don't have to do product to claim mapping in a very granular way, because that's very hard to do. So if you looking at a blockchain patent, for example, and ask me, does Coinbase infringe this patent? I don't know, because Coinbase doesn't publish a written document on their website stating how they do stuff. So what is important is that we ingest a lot of non-patent literature, in this case being block space white papers that were filed in the space, so that we are aware of what has been anticipated, what is out there. But then we look at it from different angles. So we look from claim to claim, we look from claim to abstract, from claim to full description, from embodiments to complete written disclosure. And there's a lot of effort that goes into this. And the result of what comes back, and we're looking at 120 million documents roughly when we're doing this. And the result that comes back is then basically your seed, your starting point for a smart pool. And then you have recommendations. So if you're in exchange with a founder, we can tell the founder, these patents from your portfolio would make sense to add them into a smart pool. But some of the founders say, well, I think these patents add a lot of value as well, so shouldn't we integrate these patents as well? And now your seed becomes bigger, a bit more diverse. And if you're looking at it in the right way, so that it doesn't bring too much noise into the AI assessment, you can then look at additional seeds, and you can recalibrate on the landscaping effort so that you can find potentially new or more companies in this space.
Okay, so it's a kind of guided learning, right? Guided training.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very
wonderful.
supervised.
I mean, that's supervised training. I mean, that is exactly what I'm looking for, because I'm loving machines, and when they work, I'm loving them more. But to a certain extent, with AI, we have to be careful. And I mean that kind of supervising is extreme. I mean, you integrate lots. You make a huge investment in that system with that kind of supervision. And you integrate like a collaborated tool, like a crowded tool, crowd knowledge. You integrate the background knowledge from many people which are trained and experienced in their technologies. You integrate that, and so your pool your pool technology or your AI becomes more and more smart in finding out the right matches. That makes a lot of sense. I think that's very interesting. So David Hurtado from Latin America has from NCR has a very interesting question. The question is, so we see that certain technologies take a certain time before they come. This S-curve logic, that when a technology hits the market, it takes time before we see the first introduction of the technology, and then it takes time. So can your tool improve the speed of bringing that technology to markets?
Franklin, I take this one. That's a good question. So first of all, and I wanted to mention this earlier, is we are putting a lot of effort in bridging the 18-month lag, because from filing to publication of pending applications, because that's one of the biggest things, that if you're operating on an 18-month lag in terms of knowing what is out there, what has been filed, that already is challenging when you really want to be extremely early in the adoption process. when it comes to technology adoption is, for now, we are not trying to accelerate the speed at which the filing takes place or at which the assessment in the respective patent offices take place. But of course, we are, and because of this, we have a lot of pending applications also in the pool. It does make sense to have these pending applications in the pool, even if they are not going to lead to anyone being injuncted and removed from the market anywhere. But you have them covered, and so you are secured. When it comes to, I think what will speed up is the time to product, from idea to product windows. That will shorten because of the exchange of technology within those pools. So
I would say that was exactly the idea of that question. So beside of the legal effects that we have a certain time lag between filing and granting and these kind of issues. I mean, at the end, what we're looking for is the application of the technology, and that the time should come to the product should come to the market, because that at the end of the day, that generates the revenues for everything what happens upstream, which has to make happen from R&D to patenting to all that activities. The first time when we really get money, when we generate value for customers, for companies, is when the technology hits the market. And so then when we can speed up that, I mean, that is a huge contribution for the whole innovation system.
I agree.
Okay. So I mean, that's obvious that your machine, I call it machine, don't get it wrong, that your machine can improve here this time. Another question is, when a machine can do that, I would assume that this AI can do a lot more, right? I mean, for example, in creating price tags for, I mean, when you come up with a standard licensing offer, a standardized licensing offer, and you come up with a standardized licensing contract, I would say you need, because you won't hire an valuation expert for that. It doesn't make any sense in that approach. So you need also a kind of, let's say, standardized evaluation. So how you handle that?
On the valuation side, that is something, it's a good point, because if you're looking at early stage technology and early maturity stages, it's difficult to evaluate this. What we are doing is we are looking at the industries, we are looking at comparables, of course, and we are predicting the based on growth rates and the relevant economic factors, we are predicting how the segment will perform in the nearest future. And then we can run a discounted cash flow analysis on some of the value of the patents in this space. That does not necessarily bring you to a specific royalty rate to be applied in this, but it gives you a decent idea about the growth perspective of companies, which we then check against the human analysts, what they are doing, whether we are roughly in the same ballpark, how many patents are out there, how many patents are in the pool, and how much of that potential revenue will be secured by the pool. And based on this, we then derive it as a lump sum figure, because it's just way easier to adjust that over time and to keep on feeding into this algorithm. And we do this with a machine, that's correct. So again, we are trying to, I don't want to say no touch, because AI, and that's very important, is never no touch in that space. It always requires human experts on top of it. It makes them more efficient, but it will not replace them in any way. It's more like, and that's what we're doing here in the pricing as well for the smart pools.
Okay, I mean, it's the same approach. I would assume now what I hear, that you say, okay, at the end, you get a first idea, where it could lie, what it could mean. You get an understanding of the environment, and this can the machine do very well and very fast and extremely efficient. And at the end, you integrate a certain expert knowledge on top on it, but only a small part. And at the end, you have the real outcome of the licensing deal. And with that and the contingency factors, you feed that back in your machine learning system as a supervision approach.
It's basically a top-down model because we understand what the aggregate royalty rate for the full market would be, and then we can break this down based on the market shares of the people or companies that are in the pool, and then we can allocate this accordingly. And I think this is, I don't know if we want to get into the allocation smartness of the pools or the AI assessment in general. Maybe a couple of words. I've been taking way more time than I thought I would be taking in this, but it's just it's great to engage in this discussion. Is what we think is important is that, and I read this recently in a presentation, is the age of quantity is now finished for patents, and now it's time to start the age of quality, because we have a lot of patents out there. We have converging technology areas. It's very, you want to file and file, but I think that trying to identify the candidates of higher quality in this thicket of patents is very important. And so we don't apply a linear royalty revenue allocation system in the pool. I don't want to go into the SCP space, but Judge Burrs, basically what he did in Unwired Planet is you add 1 and 2, and then you divide it by 500, and there goes your royalty rate. That's not what we're doing. What we are doing is we are identifying the validity prospects of each of the patents in the relevant space and the quality prospects of each of the patents. And that's basically citation analysis, the claim structure. Do you have system claims? Do you have device claims? Are you going for method claims only and relevant to the space? And because of this, we can predict territorial reach of the patent families, how much freedom to operate do you contribute to the pool because of your pledge. We take all of this into consideration, and then we can rank the patents, and we can allocate revenue based on the quality ranks that are obtained, which is again specifically interesting if you only have a small contribution. If you're an SME and you might have 1 or 2 patent families and you contribute to the pool. In a huge standard traditional pool, if you are accepted in the first step, your shares get diluted largely and quickly because of the thousands of patents that are in there. And even with a linear allocation method, you would fall victim to the linear and quantity, the linear allocation and the quantity. But if it's quality-based, you are increasingly likely to get a bigger share of the pie than you would get in an existing system. And you don't even have to do anything. You don't need to maintain a licensing team in your small company.
Okay, so I have a certain opinion on that. Yeah. So first of all, I think you are totally right. So the number is not helping really, because every human-made, let's say, management system does not work like you make more input and you get more output. I mean, then we wouldn't need any management, anything inside of the box. So we can just create black boxes. We put inputs in and we get outputs out. So that would be a perfect world, and this doesn't exist. So we have inefficiencies in it. We have complexity, information, whatever. And that means in every economic system, we need something like management. And inputs and outputs have to be managed quite well. And that means, and this is exactly what we apply now to the patent system and say, okay, just having many patents, it says that you have a lot of costs with that, but that doesn't mean that it is especially important. Obviously not. On the other hand, we should be very careful to associate the quality of a patent with the value of a patent. That are 2 different things. We don't have the time to go into detail on that, but sooner or later we should discuss that. But yes, there might be a correlation, but different things. It's an interesting field, and I think at the end, what is important is that the outcome is something which is acceptable for the users. that they say, I can live with that, and that makes sense for me, and that's it. And what we have, which kind of theoretical discussion we have about values and qualities is not interesting when we are real, and when you are really able to improve the overall tech transfer situation in that very specific field of this small deals and this small amount transactions. I think that is extremely interesting. So we have some minutes left, and I'm also interested in something what you think about innovation, because at the end, the whole thing, and this is again what I really like on it, it is nothing which is a part of the IP system itself. I mean, what you do, you foster, you improve, you speed up innovation. Otherwise, when there is no innovation, you cannot really make your business flourish. It's obvious, which means you are really interested in making the innovation and not just making money out of inventions. And insofar, I would like to know a little bit more about your learning, growth, and development perspective on innovation. Do you think that what you're doing can really improve also the innovation or the culture of innovation in SMEs with your approach?
I can take this one. Like you said, innovation is essential for us. We see it improving 3 areas specifically: economically, socially, and culturally. And for these small and medium-sized businesses which need to compete with big corporations, our main priority is to ensure that businesses that cannot normally afford to innovate due to those high costs we talked about earlier can have access to smart pools, and as a result, be a part of the next technological revolution. And this creates economic stability of that company, and it should not be a barrier to innovate. But however, today's prices, it's against the innovators. It's extremely high. It's making it almost impossible for these SMEs to innovate. And what we are doing with smart pools is giving them access to the technology so they can continue to do what they're doing and build new use cases. And even we've gone as far as to make it as affordable as possible, because we do not want to hinder at all the innovation process. So SMEs with revenue up to 1 million, they can potentially join for free, while businesses who are in the $1 million to $10 million range, they only pay $500. We're ensuring that no one's left behind to improve the overall economics of society. And the other 2 points, socially and culturally, looking at it socially, innovation improves, our everyday lives every day. The world is reshaping itself around companies that are innovative and embracing technological developments. And it's thanks to those innovation and innovative companies that we're able to continue and meet, the customer needs and help us predict future changes of the market, finding solutions before a problem occurs. And, this, simply put, innovation increases society's well-being. And as the standard of life increases, thanks to these advancements, we're able to, drive more socially good pools and increase the well-being of society as a whole. And this cultural phenomenon just improves, the continuous learning and growing and development of humans as a society, in incentivizing SMEs, to join pools, continue to innovate and embrace that innovation. And we want to, not hinder that and promote, the growth of these technological areas.
Yeah, I mean, with that access, I'm quite sure that it is a kind of, let's say, IP culture which has to be developed also at many SMEs. That IP counts also for them, and with such an access to this game of IP, also the acceptance will grow, because it is simply easy. I mean, that reminds me to this 99-cent deal from Apple when they started with iTunes and said, I'm sure 99 cents is okay and people will pay it, just to be on the safe side from a legal standpoint. Okay, we have to stop for the moment, but there is one very important question. I like that very much. It comes from Archie Dobbis, and it is about the explainability of AI and how, and what is the role of this explainability when we try to evaluate patent quality. So we have not the time to discuss that, but please jump into LinkedIn, and Franklin, Jonas, please answer to that, discuss that. I mean, this is extremely important for understanding the whole very interesting approach. For the moment, thank you very much for joining me here in our SAP IP Business Talks. A big thank you also to Udo Gennari with his questions and his answers. That is fascinating. So join us on LinkedIn. The floor is open now there, and over the night and tomorrow, I'm happy also to answer and to come up with additional information. So thank you to all for this discussion today. I wish you a nice, to Chicago, a nice day, and for us, a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.